Thanks, Amir. Very happy to be here at the GCC X Summit hosted by 3AI. It's a very interesting session. I look forward to speaking to you on reimagining the future of GCC. And importantly, is there a playbook that is emerging? There'll be a few slides, and hopefully, the conversation will keep us engaged. Give me a moment while I pull up the slides. Yes. Like I said, reimagining the new age GCCs and the emerging playbook. Let's look at the context as to where we are in India today. We are 1,300 and more GCCs emerging as we build the last so many decades of our existence in India. 500 more are expected to be added by fiscal 2025. Now, this is all powered by more than 1.3 million talented professionals, a great engineering pool that is behind the sustenance, growth, and the future of what marks the growth and the entire global positioning of global capability centers. We know these facts, but I think it's always good to take a moment and then be proud of this. It's also very interesting when we look at the image on the left, it's talking about our prominence in the world, our prominence on the global stage. We have leaped up almost 35 steps, 35 places in the GII, which is the Global Innovation Index ranking. We are 46 today, and of course, there are areas marked for improving it further. And I think that work is on both by GCCs, industries, and of course, by the government pooling it. It's also interesting, while the pandemic was looming large, and a lot of people were saying, well, is this the end? And many other regions were being discussed. It's not only India. We saw the addition, however, on a growth of 3M, H&M, Airbnb. I remember meeting the Lululemon team, GSK Pharma, and many other GCCs were looking at investing in India, and they were opening their tech hub centers here. Pandemic also challenged our position, our strengths, and of course, our digital IT infrastructure was an outstanding backbone that not only ensured our sustenance, but also proved as a leading edge as we talk about today as to what is new and what is waiting for us in the GCC world. Well, that's a job that I've held for many years. And I think it's very, very interesting how pandemic has shown us that we are resilient. We have the capability to scale. And more importantly, we are always going to be there when there is a discussion of technology-oriented business models. India is central. And if you look at the latest visit of Microsoft team, well, they are talking about how this is a new history being rewritten, and India's name is always going to be there shining, because this is what we have proved to the world. What is it that the emerging playbook looks like? Now, architecting a playbook for India is very close to my heart. Even when a few years back, Samir and he brought the opportunity, when he and I were looking at writing our chapters in the Wiley Innovation Black Book 4.0, there was this chapter that was, etched in by me. And thanks, Samir, thanks once again for the opportunity. But I believe this very strongly, and I'm happy to talk about it today to everyone. We need to have our India playbook. Now, I understand the structures we operate in. We operate in a structure where we are a solid line to any of the HQs, wherever they are placed, be it any of the developed country. It's largely US in most cases, but of course there's UK too emerging. Now, as much as we are part of a matrix structure and we have alignment and we have goals that are top down that we need to serve, it's very, very important that there is an overarching sense of purpose that India region also has its contribution to. What is it that we are leading in? What is it that our capabilities, when put together across all the business units, emerge together as one India region? The matrix structure, while it is extremely fulfilling and it does put the product and the business unit alignment, over a period of time, if the different business units that are held by an influencing framework under the head of a GCC India leadership, we see that gets diluted. Over a period of time, that blurs. And we see the India identity somehow not emerging as strongly as it perhaps has the opportunity to do. And that is why I say that we need to have the India playbook emerge very strongly. Something that gets written that gets documented, it obviously gets done. But it's not as easy as I'm going to say it here. But of course, there are a few steps if we walk, perhaps that when implemented is going to bring this to fruition. While most of us report to the engineering of VP worldwide, I would say that's a starting point, but not a termination point of a relationship. India as a business, as a region, is owned by the CEO and his executive team. It's very important to secure sponsorship there. It's very important to go and meet our stakeholders beyond. And of course, that I say with a pinch of salt and of course a wide smile, they take your boss along always. But it's important to sell him or her the vision of what you plan to do with India. Then secure sponsorship, meet the CEO and his exec team. And then, as much as you talk about the accomplishments that have happened over the last few decades of the GCC being in India, or it's emerging, it's new, and it has potential, it's very important to understand who amongst the executive team is with you. There are always going to be people who are going to be early adopters, and there are always going to be laggards. And I think the meat kind of lies somewhere in between. And of course, with the early adopters, it's very important to secure their sponsorship. I remember doing that fairly successfully. But having said that, this is not etched in stone. The CEO changes, the exec leadership team changes, their priorities change, and of course, you have to do this all over again. While you do that at one end, it's extremely important to engage with the local ecosystem. Now, in our day-to-day complex priorities of putting products out there, meeting customers out there, and multiple other emerging priorities, it's very, sometimes possible to just stay focused within your own business and forget that you're existing in India, you're playing in India, and therefore, what is the ecosystem that you also must leverage? Engaging with government and understanding their policies. It's always good to link in early on and make sure that you have a voice to say. I remember participating in the engineering R&D policy with the government of Karnataka, and also having your say, partnering very successfully with Startup India, Invest India, and then coming up as to how the local ecosystem of startups you can catalyze. Startups are at the absolute helm of innovation. Understanding some of those, partnering with them in your area of work, of course, that will help us take our position of GCCs a longer way. I wouldn't say this that I would say that you can't do this only with the startups and industry partnerships. You also need to invest in academic institutions. Go back, teach, figure out those long-term partnerships. If we all play the talent game, which is a fixed sum game, I'm going to take from you and you're going to take from me, we're always going to increase the cost of operations too. And also, not increasing the wider pool of talent is obviously not going to solve our problem of tomorrow. When there is a lot of new emerging technologies that are coming in, and we need to invest in new talent that is ready today, but also extremely scalable tomorrow. Well, networking with academia, startup, and ecosystem and industry are going to be three important pillars of any GCC that needs to emerge, successful and kind of win the race long term. A very important element of his give back to society. I think I don't need to talk any more about it. The fact is, just turn the leaf over a few months back to what pandemic threw us in. All of us survived it because we came together, and that stronger force is what helped us. A very parallel theme that runs is there is this huge digital agenda that India is at the center of. We need to continue to contribute. The emerging IT infrastructure and the strength of that has already placed its course, and I think we need to continue to build on that. We are, seeing a lot of COEs that are emerging in AI, ML, cybersecurity is, of course, reigning supreme. And I think a continued investment in these technologies and building up talent is another enabler that's going to add 100x. I love the way we say GCCX. The multiplier is going to come from furthering digital agenda globally, continuing to invest in this talent, and of course, the hybrid work model or whatever works for your situation, the new age leadership, which is empathetic, has the agility and is adaptable, of course, is going to be the thread that's going to thread all of this across, and that's going to give us a position to win. Continuing the conversation, all of this GCC rethink, and if you follow the 7-step model I highlighted in slide below, all of it begins with you. You are at the helm of the GCC. The leadership, the A team decides. And as much as we are going to invest in technologies, we need to infuse a culture of innovation. What are the new products that we can put out there? Is India ecosystem giving us chance to build something for India, which can be used for emerging countries? Everybody has walked this path, and those who are new and wanting to sustain and grow, I think this is going to be a continued story. How do you partner with customers, and how do you build for some regions and those that are emerging and growing? We can do this alone, or we can do this taking everyone along. And that's what inclusion mindset is all about, taking everyone along. This doesn't talk about one segment of gender or other. This is about building a collaborative agenda, having the business and thought leadership at the center, and making sure you have an enterprise mindset. I'm not saying think India. India strategy is key, but India strategy has to lock in. It has to absolutely fit in to the enterprise agenda. But none of this can happen if you don't put your mind and your ET together to build that India strategy, to build that playbook as of today. So if you're building on it, great. And if you aren't, I would say right now is the moment to start. And all of this, when it comes together and you have that A playbook, then of course, that is the time when it starts with a roadshow, when your influencing strategy is who's the stakeholder who's in the bag and who's the stakeholder that I need to go and meet and influence. And I think that's a huge part of the strategy, which when done, will put India on a huge growth agenda. And that's how careers get built. And that's how GCC continues to invest and stay ahead of the curve. It's extremely important that as you continue to build the GCC agenda, you're always liaising with the HQ, with the critical stakeholders, sponsors, and talking about what the vision is going forward. What is it, the highlights? What are the highlights that the GCC has accomplished over the last time you met? It's very important to keep this dialogue going. And as I spoke, the leadership teams will continue to change and your dialogue will continue to evolve. And there are new stakeholders who are going to come in and you'll continue selling the agenda to them. Coming to this slide, when we talk about innovation, now come 2000, since 2000, 52% of the Fortune 500 companies, my friends, they no longer exist. Now that is a very, very, it's a very strong data that's facing us. Come 22 years, 2% of the businesses Fortune 500 have disappeared. What does it tell us? Innovation is not something that will give us the edge. Innovation is something which is it's part of the core fabric. It's something that will have the business sustain itself. And therefore, if we don't see it as an opportunity, that is something that is not going to help us run our GCCs in the future. Quoting Steve Jobs, innovation is the ability to see change as an opportunity, but not a threat. And the antithesis of that, if we continue to see this as a threat, then obviously that threat is going to come and then, we are going to cease to exist. So it's an encouragement to say, let's continue to innovate, but innovation is taking the people along, building in a culture of innovation. But more importantly, it's also going to be to know what our customers want and what experiences can we give them, and then galvanizing and catalyzing our workforce to deliver that. That is going to be key. So in summation, I would say the why of the business, the core sense of purpose has to come forward. It has to get etched in, bought in, and felt by each of the engineering minds that are working with you. It's very important to then look at what is it that we are doing today, what is it that needs to change to build, what is the rethinking that is involved in imagining a GCC of future. And I think that what detailing is also going to be extremely critical. And largely it's going to be done by yourself and your A team. And in the end, it's of course going to be, when and how are you going to execute this agenda? And then how are we going to build a sustainable, scalable, resilient, and technology front-ended GCC of the future? Well, it's not as complicated. Many of the GCCs have done this. And I know all we need to do to get this going is to make sure that we have a playbook that's thought in our head, bought in by our team, and executed in real time. And our stakeholders are bought in and our sponsors are ready to make sure that they are in with you in this journey of making a GCC successful. Because once we succeed, the enterprise succeeds. Thank you.